the people of Yemen have protested against that poverty and protested against the link between their poverty, the social question, the class question of their poverty and dispossession, especially peasants who didn't have access to their own land, the link between that fact of poverty and facts of wider regional and global domination, where the feudal landlords who controlled the land of the people of South Yemen were kept in place by the British colonial state. The merchant classes who were more powerful and wealthy in the north of Yemen were kept in place by the support of the Saudi state. So there was a link, just as there was for enslaved people who rose up in Haiti in the world's only ever successful slave revolt, a link between experiences of dispossession and domination and exploitation on a class basis locally and wider imperial dynamics. And that's why the Houthis, as a very modern movement, Ansar Allah, that's just referred to by the sort of tribal name of the Houthis in the West, began as a resistance, as an opposition to Saudi domination and to wider Western domination, and they say death to America, and so stand in that complex tradition, which hasn't always been a tradition I would approve of in every respect, a complicated tradition of articulating the connection between opposition to exploitation and wider imperial domination.
No, I mean, so it was reported after Britain took part in the airstrikes last night that Britain had commenced bombing. Actually, Britain has been bombing Yemen for a long time in recent years, hasn't it?
That's right. And one of the striking things that I don't think is remotely surprising, but it tells you everything you need to know about the rules-based international order, is that Britain and America have been very swift to declare that a challenge to commercial shipping, that's not my claim, it's theirs. That is to say, the idea that that some ships might not be able to get goods easily through an important waterway is reason enough to bomb and to call people terrorists and fanatics, while the murder of over 20,000 people in a genocide in Gaza is not reason enough for the West to launch one of its vaunted no-fly zones. And indeed, while the famine and brutalization of the people of Yemen, who have suffered in enormous terms in recent years, because in refusing to allow Houthis to take power, as they now have done anyway in Sana'a, the capital city of Yemen, they're still referred to as rebels and terrorists, but in fact they control the capital. In refusing for years to allow that, the West supported one of the most brutal states in the region, Saudi Arabia, to massacre and demolish the infrastructure of Yemen. And that's been a tragedy that I think the swiftness of Western action to protect commercial shipping lines, combined with their slowness of action to protect Palestinians and their swiftness of action to brutalize people in Yemen, cause famine and devastation in order to protect their regional interests, tells you everything you need to know about the great values of freedom and democracy that we're told the West
stands for. It's also interesting that every report says that in Yemen itself, among the wider population, there's tremendous support for these attacks on shipping, tremendous support for doing something in support of Palestine.
Well, I mean, you would imagine so. One of the great disgraces of the region, of course, is that, in part because of Western imperial intrigue, Palestinians have been isolated for so long because the monarchy in Jordan and the American-backed dictatorship in Egypt, which controls one of the borders to the Gaza Strip and could therefore allow in aid and support Palestinians, in the pockets of wider imperial power, have failed to do what their own people want them to do, which is stand in solidarity with Palestinians. And it has been a marked point to note that Yemen, the poorest country in the region, with very little capacity, is making a stand and calling not for driving the Israelis into the sea, but calling for humanitarian aid to be let into Gaza as their immediate demand when they carry out these attacks. It's been a very telling point to note that often the poorest people, those with the least capacity, are the most principled in standing up for basic human values of dignity, when those with the power and the wealth fail to do so.